In this lesson, I'll teach you a melodic guitar solo in the key of A minor, and I'll explain every note choice to you by referencing chord triads. To me, this is the most effective way of finding meaningful and sweet notes for a guitar solo. So let's play through the solo first. Hi and welcome back to the Guitar Inspiration channel. My name is Maarten, and in this second melodic soloing lesson, you'll learn how to visualize chord triad patterns on the B, G and D strings of the guitar, and how these patterns are very helpful to find the most captivating notes for your guitar solos. Now, if you're new to the concept of chord triads, I suggest you start with my first video on that topic. There I go over all the basics, and I got a lot of positive feedback from you guys on that video, so thank you for that. That's why I decided to make a second one. No new theory in this video, we're only applying the same concepts to a different set of three strings, so the second, third and fourth string, and we're playing a totally different solo, a new solo I wrote for this lesson, the one you heard in the beginning of the video. In the first part of the lesson, I'll talk a bit about the backing track, the chords we'll use, and how they can be translated to the triad patterns. In the second part of the lesson, we'll go over each note of the solo, and I'll share with you my thinking process and also how you can connect these chord tones from chord to chord, from bar to bar. So definitely a very interesting video, I think, packed full of things you can use in your own playing. As always, in the description below you can find the free lesson guide. That's a PDF you can download from my website. It has all the charts and tabs. If you like the content, give the video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you're interested, you can become a supporter at buymeacoffee.com if you follow the link below. Alright, let's dive in. So first, let's take a look at the track we're playing over. It's a slow ballad in the key of A minor. And let me grab my acoustic guitar to play through the chord changes for you. First A minor, then G, D minor, C, G, A minor again, G, D minor again, then E, F, G, A minor, then C, G, A minor, F, G, and then a riff, then F, and then ending on an E here. Okay, now I'm back on the electric. Now let's translate these chords to their respective triad patterns. And for that, I first have to bring back my colorful friends from the first video. The root, the minor and major, third and the fifth. These are the essential chord tones of each chord. And when we locate these for example, the A minor chord on the second, third and fourth strings, this is what you get. And above the 12th fret, these patterns repeat. So there are just 3 triad patterns for A minor on the B, G and D strings, and since these patterns are movable, you can apply them to any minor chord just look for the root R and then start building the triads. Similarly, for any major chord, these are the 3 movable triad patterns to memorize. Note that the major chords have a major third. Now let's apply this to all the chords of our track, starting with A minor. Oh, and small disclaimer, the tip of my middle finger might look a bit damaged in this video. The edge of the nail broke off a few days ago, so I had to cut it quite short. It's healing, but still looking a bit red. But like I tell my guitar students, never let painful fingertips hold you back. So this was not going to stop me from recording this video. So let's continue. The first chord of our track is A minor. Here's the basic triad again. First inversion. And then the second inversion. Next is the G chord. First inversion, and then second inversion. Then we have the D minor chord. Then we have the C chord. Then we have the E chord. And finally, the F. Those triad patterns are just a half step up from the E major triads. Okay, so now that we know our chords and our triads for our backing track, you could ask the question, why is it valuable to learn these triad patterns? What's their use? Well, the thing is, when I start improvising over a backing track, I'll often start with a pentatonic scale, as that's a safe choice. For example, our backing track is in the key of A minor, so I might start with a A minor pentatonic scale, the one that you can see here. This is my base layer of information. This is where I'll start. And after a while, I'll start adding the triad patterns. So for each chord that passes by, I'll start adding the triad patterns for that chord. And these will give me a second layer of information. These will give me the chord tones, the notes that relate best to the underlying harmony at that time, because they are part of the underlying chord. And you'll see that these chord tones often are also part of the pentatonic scale. Sometimes they're not, but they're always the most meaningful choices. So I'll start gravitating towards them, resting on them, playing around them. There are so many creative things you can do when you know where these chord tones are. And this is the skill I want to teach you in this lesson. To me, it was especially challenging to write a solo that only uses the triad patterns on B, G, and D strings. Now, I'll use surrounding notes as well, but I'm only using the B, D, and G strings. So let's see how that went. Let's start with bar 1. In bar 1, we're opening the solo by quickly sliding from the 8th to the 10th fret on the B string. Slide with your 3rd finger. And make sure you're not resting on that 8th fret here for too long. This is just a grace note that is swiftly followed by that 10th fret, played with your 3rd finger. And that 10th fret is the A, it's the root of our first chord, A minor. And you can see below where it lies in the first inversion, A minor triad. So for each bar, each note in this lesson, I'll show you the corresponding triads on the left of the tabs. And you can see this A is the root R, it's the root of our first chord. So by resting on that A, the solo already starts with a very strong chord tone. Also, the track is in the key of A minor, so playing an A here is a fail-proof choice. After that, play the 9th fret on the G string with your 2nd finger, and you can see this note is also part of that A minor triad. It's the 5th of the chord. By the way, I'm playing all downstrokes here. I won't focus too much on the picking pattern in this lesson. Obviously, you can see how I pick everything on the right-hand camera. At the end of bar 1, slide from the 10th to the 12th fret on the B string, anticipating bar 2. Rhythmically, this is a dotted 8th note and a 16th note, so long, short. And again, I'm sliding with my 3rd finger. So bar 1 goes like this. In bar 2, the chord is now G. And by moving from A minor to G, we now must change the triad shapes to the major triad patterns to see where the chord tones for G are. And by visualizing the second inversion, G major triad, the meaning of the slide at the end of bar 1 becomes apparent. It shows that that 12th fret on the B string, where bar 1 ended, is part of that second inversion G triad. In fact, it's the major 3rd of G. In bar 2, I'm choosing to land on the 12th fret of the G string. That's the root R of the chord, also part of that triad. And play this note with your 2nd finger. And by playing this note, we're repeating a similar descending pattern between the B and G strings, just like we did in bar 1. That was bar 1, A minor triad. And that's the second inversion G major triad in bar 2. So you see, just by playing the notes that are part of the triads, we're already playing a melodic motif. So you can see with that little slide, we're just connecting both triads. And that's all we're doing in bars 1 and 2, basically. We're not doing that much, just establishing the lead guitar in the mix with a few notes that are part of the underlying triads. So in bar 2, that 12th fret here is a long note that lasts for 3 beats. Now at the end of bar 2, I'm anticipating the next chord, which is D minor. In bar 3, we're going for the root D of that chord here on the 7th fret of the G string, and again, the second inversion minor triad. While improvising this part, I instinctively thought of connecting to the D in bar 3 by playing a pentatonic lick. Because look where that D is in the minor pentatonic scale. The 7th fret on the G string is part of that minor pentatonic box position. So at the end of bar 2, I play these 2 notes, and then deliberately I end on that D, on the 7th fret of the G string. That's not only part of the minor pentatonic scale, but that's also part of the chord triad at that time in bar 3. So this is an example of how I use my bass layer, my minor pentatonic scale, to create a little connecting lick, and then deliberately land on a chord tone in bar 3 when the D minor chord hits. Let's take a closer look at that connecting lick. Play the 7th fret on the D string with your 3rd finger, and then the 5th fret on the G string with your 1st finger. And then slide with your 1st finger to that 7th fret on the G string, precisely at the time when the D minor chord happens. So this is how we're connecting bars 2 and 3 with a slide lick. That brings us to the D minor chord. Once in bar 3, we're now in the second inversion D minor triad. Play the D for 3 whole beats. This is the root of the chord on the G string. Now what's interesting here is that in hindsight, you could also consider the connecting notes at the end of bar 2 as part of a D minor 7 chord, because that 7th fret on the G string is the 5th of D minor, and that 5th fret on the G string is the flat 7. So our little connecting lick is not only minor pentatonic in origin, but also a little D minor 7 arpeggio. By the way, these connecting notes between bars 2 and 3 will also form a melodic motif that we'll repeat and expand on in this bar and the following bars. Case in point is the connecting lick at the end of bar 3. Take a closer look and you'll see it's almost identical to the previous connecting lick. Play the 7th fret on the D string, again with your 3rd finger. Then the 5th fret on the G string with your 1st finger. And this time we're connecting to bar 4 with a hammer-on. Now the note we're landing on in bar 4 is again the D on the 7th fret of the G string. But instead of sliding towards the D like we did between bars 2 and 3, we're now hammering on with our 3rd finger. Other than that, it's exactly the same lick. Bringing us to bar 4. So in bar 4, we're again landing on the D on the 7th fret of the G string, but this time it's not a chord tone. Bar 4 has 2 chords, so the first 2 beats have the C chord, the 3rd and 4th beat have the G chord, and for each new chord we have to change the triad patterns. So when you look at the position of this 7th fret on the G string relative to the triads of the C chord, you can see this is not a chord tone. It isn't part of the triad. The D is the 2nd degree or the 9th relative to the C, implying a C add 9 chord. So although we're playing the same lick leading into the D, it now sounds different because the underlying chord has changed from D minor, bar 3, to C in bar 4. And playing non-chord tones creates more tension, and I especially like the sound of the 9th over any minor or major chord. In the rest of bar 4, we'll continue circling around this D melodically, first sliding to the 9th fret, slide with your 3rd finger, then pull off back to that 7th fret. This is your 1st finger now. Then slide that 1st finger to the 5th fret, all on that same string. And then on beat 3 in bar 4, play the 7th fret again with your 3rd finger. Take your time to play these slides and hammer-ons in bar 4, don't rush them. Halfway bar 4, like we said, the chord changes back to G. And note that the G major triad does have a D in it. So the meaning of the D has changed again, back to a chord tone. This time it's the 5th in the G major basic triad. At the end of bar 4, we're playing a 2-note descending lick, a slide lick. Play the 5th fret on the G string with your 1st finger and slide to the 4th fret. This little lick may not seem like much, but it's a deliberate move. When you look at it, harmonically speaking, that 5th fret on the G string. So this note here, that 5th fret isn't part of the G major triad, it's the 4th of G. So this implies a G sus4 chord, a G chord without a 3rd, but with a 4th instead. It's a very nice sound. And then the last note in bar 4 is the 4th fret again on the G string, implying a regular G chord again. So harmonically speaking, this is the harmony moving from G sus4 to a regular G chord, resolving to A minor in bar 5. So you see, by playing these small connecting licks, how you can imply additional harmony. Okay, so now let's repeat bars 1 to 4 with the metronome. Bars 3 and 4 have what is known as a static melody, and this is a melodic instrument where you play the same note repeatedly while the underlying chords do change. So we've played the D 3 times. first as part of the D minor chord, then as a non-chord tone over the C chord, and then as a chord tone again over the G chord. So the chords change, but the melody stayed circling around that D as a melodic center. And this is a static melody. Let me demonstrate how that sounds when a piano plays this melody. I've simplified it a little bit, but the piano will play the chords and the basic melody on top. Knowing your triad patterns gives you easier access to this technique of creating a static melody. Consider it like a smart way of repeating yourself. After that connecting slide lick in bar 4, our first melodic phrase ends in bar 5 on the 7th fret of the D string. So now it's time to start a second melodic phrase. Just like the chord progression is now back to A minor, we're starting our second melodic phrase in the same spot as the first inversion triad of A minor. And the way to get there is by playing a slide on the B string, again a quick slide, so we're sliding from around the 5th fret back to the 10th fret. This is another slide with our 3rd finger. So we're back in the same spot here. This is the A of our first inversion, A minor triad, and this note is an octave higher than this one, the 7th fret on the D string. After that, perform a pre-bend at the end of bar 5. This is a technique I covered in my bending techniques lesson. Definitely something you should check out if you haven't already. A pre-bend is a technique where you're bending the string at first without picking it. So mute the string with the side of your right hand, then push the string up from the 10th fret, and we're doing a full step pre-bend, so you have to guess where this pitch is. This is the B. So we're pushing the A a full step up. This was a regular bend, by the way. For a pre-bend, wait to pick until the string is fully bent. Then you can pick and play the release. So again, mute the string first, push up, then pick, and play the release in a controlled manner. So a full step up from that root in the 10th fret. This is a bend towards, again, the 2nd or the 9th of the A minor chord. So bar 5 goes like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. In bar 6, after that pre-bend and release, we're playing the 8th fret on the B string. Now bar 6 is very similar to bar 2. The chord has changed from A minor to G, so we're playing the root G here. The only difference being that we're now playing that root G on the B string instead of the 12th fret on the G string. Why the B string? Well, to me it felt better playing it here after that pre-bend and release. And I'm playing it with my first finger, and I'm definitely giving it some vibrato, as this is again a very long note that lasts for 3 beats. Also very similar to what we did at the end of bar 2 is the connecting lick at the end of bar 6. This is our pentatonic connecting lick again. The 7th fret on the D string and the 5th fret on the G string. So we're reusing the same motif to connect to bar 7, which has again the D minor chord. So nothing new in bar 6. Just following the chords, just following the triads, and we're using our connecting motif. Bar 7 is a variation on the lick in bar 4. A very melodic lick that circles around the root D in the 2nd inversion triad. Only the rhythm is different here. So first slide from the 7th to the 9th fret on the G string with your 3rd finger. And pull back off to the 7th fret to your 1st finger. Slide to the 5th fret with your 1st finger. And then hammer on back to the 7th fret. So this last 7th fret here this time is a hammer on. So very similar to bar 4, but like I said, the rhythm is different as I'm not resting on that first 7th fret. I'm only resting on beat 2. But the sequence of notes is very similar to bar 4. At the end of bar 7 is also a rhythmic variation of our connecting pentatonic lick, now played as a triplet. So first play the 7th fret on the D string with your 3rd finger, then the 5th fret on the G string with your 1st finger, and then the 7th fret on the G string again with your 3rd finger. And the picking, to me, it feels better to play down, up, down. So not 16 notes this time, but a triplet. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So bar 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. In bar 8, after that triplet lick at the end of bar 7, we're playing a slow bend from the 7th fret on the G string, a full step bend. Bend with your 3rd finger and support it with your 1st and 2nd finger. And this support is very important here because we're slowly bending the string. I like to use my tremolo bar here to make the note last a little longer. Now, when you look at the chord here is E. So what we're doing when we're playing this bend is we're bending from the flat 7 of E, implying an E7 chord, towards the root of the chord, that E here. That's part of the second inversion E major triad. The E chord is very interesting in this chord progression as it isn't part of the key of A minor because it has a G sharp in it. And for us improvisers, these chords borrowed from other keys are always tricky spots. The A minor pentatonic scale, for example, doesn't have a G sharp, only a G natural. That will sound kind of weird here. But our triads will come to the rescue here, as they will always show you the correct chord tones, even if some of them are from another key, like that G sharp. You could work it into the solo, but I found it a bit too much. It sounds very strong. So that's why I chose to bend towards the root, E. The lick at the end of bar 8 I'll explain in a minute. First, let's repeat bars 5 to 8 with the metronome. Before moving on, I want to talk a little bit about what happens at the end of bar 8. You can see there's a little slide lick there from the 5th to the 7th fret. And this lick will bring us into bar 9. And if we peak in bar 9, you can see that the first note there is the 6th fret on the B string. So this is the lick that brings us from bar 8 to bar 9. Now in bar 9 the chord is F, and this connecting lick actually relates to the F chord and not the E chord in bar 8. Meaning I'm starting to play a chord tone. That 7th fret on the D string is a chord tone from the F chord in bar 9, even before that chord is being played. This is a concept I like to call anticipation, and this is something I do quite often. That is starting to play chord tones of a chord that is not yet being played. This is another way of connecting licks between bars. When I'm improvising, I'm always thinking of the next chord. I'm always looking ahead and then reverse engineering a way to get there. And that can be a pentatonic lick, or by anticipating the chord tones of the next chord, or a combination of both. Why not? Later in the video, I'll show you the exact opposite of anticipation. I'll show you a lick that starts after the chord change has happened. Now we're in the B section of our solo, part 2. And you could look at this as the chorus of our track. The energy level is definitely higher. Here you can hear the instruments in the backing track doing different things. The drummer uses more cymbals. There's a synth entering the mix, also some distorted guitars in the background. So I think it's important as a soloist that you react to these things. And in our solo, we'll react to this by expanding the melody into a higher register. Let's take a look. We already know the first chord in bar 9 is the F chord, and that chord is being anticipated by the lick at the end of bar 8. So that slide lick connects to bar 9. That slide from the 5th to the 7th fret on the D string, played with the 2nd finger. On beat 1 of bar 9, play the 6th fret on the B string with an upstroke. This is the root of the F chord in the first inversion F major triad. Next, we're going to follow the second inversion triads by their roots on the B string. So we're going to move up the guitar neck, and the B string will work as our guide string. After a hammer-on from the 5th to the 6th fret on that B string, with your 1st and 2nd finger to play the hammer-on, quickly slide from the 6th to the 8th fret on the B string with your 2nd finger. And this is the root G again in that first inversion triad. So we're mimicking the movement in the chords, because on beat 3 in bar 9, the chord is now G. So first the root of the F chord, and then the root of the G chord. And bar 9 with a hammer-on from the 6th to the 8th fret on the B string, played with your 1st and 3rd finger. So bar 9 with the anticipating lick. In bar 10, we're still moving up, root by root on the B string. This time, quickly sliding from the 8th to the 10th fret on the B string, that 10th fret. This is the A, the familiar spot where we started the solo in the first inversion A minor triad. Next, we'll repeat the descending move to the 9th fret on the G string again, played with your 2nd finger. In the rest of bar 10, we're playing a pedal point lick, a very melodic lick that only works if we're doing a little position switch with our fretting hand. So if you followed until now, your 2nd finger must be on the 9th fret of the G string. Now switch that to your 1st finger. That will make the lick work better. Play that 9th fret on the G string again with a downstroke. Then play the 10th fret on the B string with an upstroke with your 2nd finger. Then bounce back to the 9th fret on the G string. Play this again with a downstroke, and then the 12th fret on the B string with your 3rd finger and an upstroke. And I know you might say, why not the pinky here on the 12th fret? Well, that becomes clear in a minute. Okay. And rhythmically, the last 3 notes of this pattern form a triplet. So bar 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. In bar 11, our pedal point lick ends in a half step bend from the 12th fret on the B string. So we're bending towards this pitch here. This is the C, the root of the C chord. Play this bend with your third finger supported by your first and second finger. And also this makes clear why we played that last note in that pedal point lick with our third finger, as this makes the half step bend easier. Now the C chord comes somewhat as a surprise in the progression here. The C chord is a major chord that is very similar to the A minor chord. It replaces the A minor chord at this point in the progression. So I really wanted to emphasize the C here. That's why we're bending towards the root of that chord in the first inversion, C major triad. After a short hold, release back to the 12th fret, and then we're repeating the rhythmic pattern from bar 9, first playing a hammer-on of 2 16th notes from the 10th to the 13th fret on the B string. Play with your first and third finger, so make sure you're hammering on the 13th fret, not the 12th fret. And then we're moving up, again with a quick slide from the 13th to the 15th fret. So we're still moving up the B string. On beat 3 in bar 11, the chord is now G. So by playing this slide, we're entering the G basic triad. So not a root here, but the 5th of the chord. There's no root for the G chord available on the B string here. So that's why we're playing the 5th. Note that these licks are also A minor pentatonic in origin. But again, thinking about the triads gives you a clear indication of where you can rest the melody for a while. And bar 11 with a hammer-on from the 13th to the 15th fret, so again 2 16th notes. This is already anticipating the A minor chord in bar 12. So bar 11 with the pedal point lick, in bar 10 added a 1, 2, 3. In bar 12, we're playing 2 full step bends from the 15th fret on the B string. So after those 2 16th notes at the end of bar 11, we're playing a regular full step bend on the B string. Bend with your third finger supported by your first and second finger. And the note we're bending to is this one here. This is the E, the 5th of the A minor chord that we can find in the A minor basic triad. The second note in bar 12 is just the same bend that is played again. But we're not repeating the bending motion, just pick the string a second time. You can see the bending arrow is vertical. That actually means it's a pre-bend, but we did the bend already in the beginning of bar 12, so that's why we don't have to repeat it. And give it some vibrato here. Okay, let's repeat bars 9 to 12 with the metronome. In bar 13, our ascending melodic line has come to an end. And by the way, did you notice there is no anticipating lick leading into bar 13? In fact, bar 13 starts with a little rest, a little comma, a breath, so to speak. So this is an example of us playing behind the chord change. First, the transition to the F chord happens, and then we're playing the following lick. So first hammer on quickly from the 17th to the 18th fret on the B string. So a quick hammer on, play the 17th fret with your first finger, the 18th fret with your second finger. This is the F in the first inversion, F major triad. And then we're sliding back from the 17th fret on the B string to the 13th fret with our first finger. This slower 8th note slide brings us back to the basic F major triad. And I know you can play this F here as well. But I wanted to do a slide. So that's why I played it here, and I move to the basic F major triad. When the chord changes back to G on beat 3 of that bar, again we're playing a quick hammer-on from the 13th to the 15th fret on the B string with your third finger, and that brings us back to the G major basic triad. So bar 13 goes like this: 3, 4, rest. And play this 15th fret with some vibrato. At the end of bar 13, we do have another anticipating lick, again preparing us for another F chord in bar 14. So we're outlining the F major triad again. Play the 14th fret on the G string with your second finger, and the 13th fret on the B string with your first finger. So outlining the major F basic triad, or you could consider these notes part of the A minor pentatonic scale again. So bar 13 once more: 3, 4, 1. Bar 14 is somewhat of a special case, as each beat has a different chord, and this corresponds with the following guitar riff. So on beat 1, the F chord, and the riff is on the first fret of the E string, the F. Beat 2 is the G chord, and the riff is on the third fret of the E string. Beat 3 has the A minor chord, and the riff is on the 5th fret of the E string. And on beat 4, we're back to the G and the 3rd fret of the E string. So the riff is just following the chord changes here. Now let's take a look at what the solo does in bar 14. And to be honest, because of the faster chord changes, I found it to be more challenging to think in triads. And to be honest, when I was improvising over this riff, I let go of the triads and started thinking of the full A minor scale. So you can see part of that A minor scale below. And what we're playing here in bar 14 is a descending melodic line that opposes the upward motion of the riff. And my thinking here was to land on the A, on the 14th fret of the G string, on beat 3 of bar 14. That's the root of the A minor chord that happens on beat 3. So we're playing this lick. That just follows the A minor scale down towards its root. First, play the 15th fret on the B string with your first finger. And then do a hammer-on to the 17th fret on that same B string. Make the first note long, the second note short. The first note is a dotted 8th note, the second one is a 16th note, so long, short. Then on beat 2, the G chord happens and we're moving here. So a similar hammer-on, this time from the 13th to the 15th fret on that B string. Make the first note longer, and you can even give it some vibrato. But this time we're creating a little embellishment around that second note. We're not only playing that 15th fret with a hammer-on, we're pulling back off, and we're sliding our first finger to the 12th fret. So let me play that real slow for you. So 13th fret with your first finger, hammer on to the 15th fret, pull back off to your first finger, 13th fret, and then slide your first finger to the 12th fret. then we can land on the 14th fret of the G string. That's our A that happens when the A minor chord happens. So we reached our goal of playing the A over the A minor chord. Rhythmically, the pattern here is similar to what we played in bar 4, kind of like a rhythmic motif here. That longer 8th note, that dotted 8th note, and that shorter 16th note. But we're expanding on that theme by adding an embellishment here. Try not to rush through bar 14, try to steadily follow the underlying chord changes and the underlying guitar riff. Bar 14 ends with another triplet of notes from the same scale. Slide to the 14th fret of the G string. I'm coming from around the 12th fret, sliding with my second finger. With a downstroke. And an upstroke for the 13th fret on the B string, play with your first finger. And then a hammer on to the 15th fret of the B string again. These are triplets, so be sure to add the triplet feel here. So that entire bar 14 goes like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. In bar 15, the chord is back to F, and we can think in triads again here. Bar 15 starts a little bit tricky with a pre-bend from the 15th fret on the B string. So again, we have to mute the string with the side of our right hand, pushing the string a full step up. That means you have to play a little tiny break between bar 14 and 15. When you come from that triplet, you have to mute the strings very, very briefly so you have time to push the string a full step up. When you have bent the string a full step up, so the note we're aiming for here is this one, is the E, then you can slowly release back to the 15th fret. Now let's talk about that E for a minute, because you can see on the triad chart that this E isn't part of any triad of the underlying F chord. In fact, it has nothing to do with the F triad. It's the 7th of the F chord, so it implies an F major 7 chord. Bar 15 ends with a very similar triplet as in bar 14. Slide to the 14th fret on the G string, 13th fret on the B string, and then the 15th fret on the B string. The only difference is that this is not a hammer-on this time between the 13th and the 15th fret. So downstroke, upstroke, downstroke. In bar 16, we're repeating the full step bend from the 15th fret on the B string, but this time played as a regular bend, so no pre-bend this time. And a very slow bend towards that E. That's part of the first inversion E major triad. In that sense, bar 16 is very similar to what we did in bar 8. In bar 8, we did a full step bend towards the root of the E chord. Here we're doing the same thing, but an octave up. And compared to bar 15, playing this pitch here, bending towards that E, makes a lot more sense, because in bar 15, that wasn't a chord tone. Like I mentioned in bar 15, playing that E implies an F major 7 chord. Here it's just the root of the chord, and because that makes a lot more sense, this creates a feeling of resolution. And note how I bend very slowly here to delay this feeling of resolution. So a very interesting bend, just repeating the same bend but in a different articulation, not as a pre-bend, but bending towards the same note creates a different sound here. In bar 8, I already explained why the E chord is special here, because it isn't part of the key of A minor. It brings the G sharp in the harmony, and that note isn't part of the key of A minor. But if you want, you can play the G sharp, as I demonstrated in bar 8. Let's try the same thing here. So on the 13th frets of the G string in the basic E major triad, there's your G sharp. But let's be honest, this G sharp here sounds like pure evil, don't you think? That's just too much drama for me, so that's why I chose to bend towards the root again. And then the track abruptly stops. That's bar 16. This concludes my second melodic soloing lesson. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. This video turned out to be a bit longer than I had anticipated, but I hope you found some value in it. I hope it gave you some more insight in how visualizing triad patterns can make you connect better with the underlying harmony of a track. And I hope it helps you when you play a solo, you improvise over a backing track. I hope it helps you to find these chord tones and to tell a better story as a melodic soloist. Now remember, this is just a concept, this is not theoretical physics. Playing guitar is and will always be a creative art form with a lot of freedom, but I think if you spend some time with this concept of visualizing triads, you'll start feeling where these chord tones are. You'll start gravitating towards them because you've internalized how they sound. And I think there lies the true value of this concept. Think of it like learning how to ride a bicycle. It may seem a lot at first to process at the same time, but the best way to learn how to ride a bike is by doing it. And once you know how to ride a bike, you're no longer thinking about what your arms have to do and what your legs have to do. It has become second nature. And I think the same goes for a lot of concepts on a musical instrument. It seems theoretical at first, but by practicing, you'll start internalizing these concepts, and this generates a lot of freedom in your playing. To practice, you can also play along with the jam track that I uploaded on my channel. The first part of the jam track, the first minute or so, is identical to the backing track I use in this video, and then the A sections and B sections, they repeat multiple times, so you can start making your own licks with this visualizing triads concept. A very special thank you to my supporters, the people who support me at buymeacoffee.com, the people who gave me feedback on my previous video and motivated me to make this second one. Thank you so much for letting me know that this concept has helped you in your playing. So this inspires me to keep on making these videos as an independent creator. Your feedback is always very valuable to me. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.